All right, so welcome to AI-driven development. I did this presentation at my work, and my work colleague Shafiq Amin is the one that created it, and then we collaborated on the session, and now I am doing the same presentation for you all. Let's go ahead and get started. We have quite a bit of slides to get through here before the demo. The outline of the session is we're going to talk about the core concepts and the history with AI and what have we reached today and what are the strengths and weaknesses of AI. And then we're going to have a quick overview of Copilot and how to use it. And we're going to talk about some best practices, and then we're going to have a live demo and a Q&A at the end. So first thing that AI is artificial intelligence. Some other companies would like you to believe it's Apple intelligence, but it's actually artificial intelligence. It's a very broad field and actually founded in 1956, and it attempts to simulate our intelligence in computers. It's not as intelligent, but it's coming pretty close in some cases. And LLMs, short for large language models, is a specific type of neural network-based AI model trained on vast amount of text data. Now, LLMs and all the AI, like all the accomplishment of AI right now is all thanks to the something called the transformer architecture. So the neural network architecture that's being used at the heart of all LLMs is actually came out of a paper published by Google engineers in 2017. It's called "Attention is All You Need." Uh, Disclaimer: the first time I've read it, actually, the first 10 times I've read anything inside of that, I didn't understand it. And so I went to YouTube, and there are long 1 hour, 2 hour videos explaining it. And only when I actually listened to those videos and came back to read the paper have I actually understood it. So it is publicly available. It's very easy to find. Just search for it. It's like been widely propagated and quoted. And so I encourage you to look at it, but don't feel discouraged if you don't understand it. AI agent. So we're going to actually use an AI agent today in the demo, but basically it's a software powered by LLMs, but can be powered by uh, um, other models, and it can make decision and even execute actions autonomously on your behalf. And finally, a very important word, hallucination. It is when an LLM gives you an answer, but that answer is clearly wrong, and there's no way this answer is true. And, and so it's hallucinating. The sad part is sometimes that answer is very convincing, but you'll see when using the demo that we're going to be validating everything it does and making sure we're understanding it so that we don't fall in any common pitfalls where like we're not validating and then using the data the generated content directly, and that would lead to catastrophes. So, anyways, the history. So, we've always been helped by computers to write code since the very beginning, and it's we're always trying to automate and make things better for us, and we so we can focus on solving higher level problems. And there's a cost for that. We are giving up our control and having AI do things for us. And we'll talk about the weaknesses of AI in a couple of slides. So in the 1940s, programs were written in machine code, binary or hex, and then we started using assemblers in the 1950s, which improved the developer experiences, but not by a lot. In the 70s, we start getting IDEs, integrated development environments, which introduced the autocomplete. And autocomplete is basically what LLMs are doing for us today, but it's a very, very strong autocomplete that can guess everything based on the context. So in 2020, LLM vendors quickly realized that code is something very natural for LLMs to generate for two main reasons. It is text only. It doesn't need any creative thing. Like you're not gonna draw. You're not gonna do anything that would be very complex. And the second thing is that there's huge amount of code that is open source and publicly available, so we can train models very easily on that. So this is a quick history of how things happen. We already went over a few, but basically, we started from writing very low level to being able to have things suggested for us in the 2020s. But then today, LLMs are incredibly good. They're very near perfect eh, in most cases, but when writing new codes. In debugging, I wouldn't say they're perfect, but they're very good. There are a couple of benchmarks, coding benchmarks like human eval, MBPP, and the other ones listed there. Shafiq, my colleague, chose to show the results from human eval, and you can see that when comparing the code that the LMs are generating, they are getting really high scores and getting better and better. So, why are they so good? There is like it's going around that it's merely predicting the next token. Well, it is, but it's more complex than that. Every word before the next token is converted into vertices, and then it's given weights, and there's very complex things going on in the background, so that when it guesses the next word, it is going to be the most likely word that you need. And that's when neural networks come in handy, because before, like the paper from Google, all you need is attention. Things had to happen sequentially. You would finish job A and then job B and then job C, and that would take a very big amount of time. So when the transformer the transformer architecture was discovered or made public by Google, um, it allowed for things to happen in parallel. And so all that data, all that context is being consumed, and then it's predicting the right next token for you. And the transformer network has advanced technique that are employed, like function calling, RAG, and chain of thought, and mixture of expert. We're not going to go into all of that, but they are really good techniques that you should look up later. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me through the GDG page. So it's massive scale, billions or even trillions of parameters and ways, and it's computed for training and inference. So the reinforcement learning from human feedback is also a very important factor here. Like we use it and then we give it feedback on how it did, and then that training data is cycled through the system and it becomes better and better. The model is trained and it becomes better. And so the result is emergent intelligence that is incredible. So there are a couple of coding assistants out there. We have ChatGPT, the very famous one, and then Claude 3.7 Sonnet. It's a really good one. I find that it times out a lot when trying to generate responses, but it is in preview mode. So hopefully, when it becomes generally available, it's going to be a lot faster. And then, of course, Google's Gemini, uh, DeepSeek, who got some hype recently, but ended up to be a little weak compared to its competition. It's still very good, but you really need resources to get that going locally. Even with ChatGPT, you need more resources. So DeepSeek is still a very good model, and it's better than a lot of the other ones, but still, for coding, I find that Claude Sonnet is the best right now. So GitHub Copilot has a couple of implementations out of it for models. Like the best for me is 3.7 Sonnet, but you can use Gemini, you can use GPT 4.0, you can use 4.0 Mini, you can use a bunch of things. And we'll go through in the demo in VS Code and see how you can do that. There's Cody Klein, and Klein is actually an agent, so it can do stuff for you. Find is a search engine, and Cursor is a VS Code fork, and it also changes things for you and modifies the code on your behalf. So it is an agent. The other ones I haven't used myself and haven't tried, but I've been meaning to get to them, so hopefully I will soon. So, what does AI excel at? So, code completion. It is basically autocomplete on steroid, and what it really gives you more than just the next word. It can, like, if you're starting to type a function name, it probably will give you the whole function, as long as it's something that's not too complex. If it's a like a true function where you give it inputs and it gives you an output without like modifying the database or anything like that, it's going to give you a very accurate one. But if you want to make API calls and stuff like that, depending on how generally available the documentation for that API, the result might be very accurate, but it will be very close to what it needs to be. And then you just need to validate and make sure that it works. We're going to go in the demo and actually create an API and then create tests for them. And then we're going to create documentation for that. And you're going to see that hands on, which is why I'm trying to get through this demo, this slides really quickly. So boilerplate code is something that it really excels at. It's indexed all of Stack Overflow, so we don't have to go look and find a code snippet and then copy and paste it. It can now just, guess it and put it in our code and even adapt it to our coding style and make sure that everything looks good. It's really good at code reviews and debugging. It can detect errors and bugs, and generally those are hard to spot by humans. But because of how um, it's designed and how it doesn't have emotion and doesn't get tired and stuff like that, it is better at those things. When in certain cases, there are some cases that it really just sends you into a rabbit hole that's endless. And then it's really good to help you understand the existing code. So, say you're going into a legacy a piece of code and you don't know what it's doing, get your AI friend to tell you what is happening with it. And again, the weaknesses are hallucinations. Sometimes it just does not give you a real answer, but it sure does look very real. It can't handle complex architectural decision. Uh, it cannot understand ambiguous requirements. It will pick one for you, and it will implement it. So you better get your prompt really buttoned up. Otherwise, it's just gonna guess and do something you don't want. And you're gonna see in the demo, I'm gonna like check in everything that I have that's working before I talk to the AI again, because I'm scared that the next one will break it beyond repair. And so always have your code backed up or checked in or whatever. And then it has some ethical and legal consideration like violating licensing or intellectual property laws. For example, GitHub Copilot has a mode that does not let it use open source snippets, just because what if it has a license that requires you to open source your code when you use it? If you use that code, then by law, you're required to make your code open source as well. So if a company doesn't want to do that, then uh, we can't really use that code snippet. And so it has licensing and intellectual property considerations. In security, generating code with potential vulnerabilities. So when I go and show you the agent mode in Visual Studio Code Insiders, um, it it helps a little bit because Copilot Edit, when you say, for example, add this dependency to my project, it will go and add a dependency that's maybe a couple of months, maybe a couple of years old, depending on the LLM's answer for it. So sometimes it installs Express that's a couple of years old, and of course it has some vulnerabilities. And so you really want to always install the latest things and make sure that your code is safe for production, and have unit tests and have all the security testing that you need to do. And then visual reasoning is really bad. So sometimes you tell it to create a web page. The web page has everything you need, but then the buttons and the things on the page are in all different places, and it's really not good. So the key takeaways here is that coding assistants are a new tool for vastly improving your productivity, but use them with caution. The more localized the context, the better the output. So try to give it just the right context it needs, because if you give it more, it won't give you the best results. If you give it less, then it won't give you the best results. Um, there's no escaping it. If you opt out of AI, you will lose efficiency. 5 months ago or so, my job was very different. Before the company came and says, "Hey, you can get Copilot license for free, and you can start using it." I immediately started using it, and my job transformed from having to think and do a lot of things manually to having to verify the prompt that I sent. Is it going to give me the things that I need? And when it gives me something, I need to code review it and make sure that it's doing what it's doing. And then ultimately, for things that are hard for AI to do, that's when I go back to the old ways and just write whatever I need to write, and then have AI code review myself, because I do like having AI code reviewing me. It it does allow me to fix bugs before they reach even another developer's eye. And like Andre said, English is the hottest new programming language, and we're going to see that today. So, in the interest of time, I'm actually going to pause the presentation, and I'm going to start going through the demo, just so that we can see the demo. And then if we have time in the end, let's go ahead and continue the presentation, and I can email the presentation out to everyone. So right now, I've opened Visual Studio Insiders, not the regular Visual Studio. The regular Visual Studio does not have the agent mode yet. And so if you want to use the agent mode, all you got to do is install the Visual Studio Insiders. Now, if you've used Visual Studio before, you'll know that you do not want to start typing stuff in a new file. You need to create a folder and you need to open that folder. So the first thing we'll do is I'll go to my desktop, or maybe I'll just go into my regular dev folder and create a new folder, call it co AI driven development. So I've tested this demo probably 20 times by now, and I've presented it once. It only errors out when I'm presenting. And so do not fret. We will have errors in this demo. Like we will always have errors in demos. So I'm gonna click here on this Copilot here, which will show me the Copilot chat, but then I'm gonna click on Copilot edits. Now in Copilot edits, you'll see that you can choose the model that you want to use. The default is 4.0, but I'm going to use the Sonnet preview. And then here you can use the edit mode, which is gonna open files and edit them for you, but it will not execute commands. If you want to execute commands, you go to the agent mode here, and then you can start going ahead and typing prompts to it. Now, I am intentionally using bad prompts in this demo. You can use very well defined prompts, but I'm intentionally using bad prompts just because I want everyone to know, hey, you don't have to be an expert to do this. Just try it and you'll see it works. So the first prompt here is I'm going to ask it, hey, can you create a calculator API? And you generally want to order the API. You don't want to ask it whether it can do something or not, or say, please, or stuff like that. Just give it orders because it is more likely that it will do the thing you want it to do if you order it. Just because all the things on the internet, if you ask a question, yes or no, is a valid answer. So don't let it guess. Just tell it what to do. So you notice that I didn't give it the language it needs to create it in. I did not give it like any details about the calculator or the functions. It went ahead and chose Node.js for the app. It started by creating a package.json and put the name calculator API. It put some um, scripts here. So start will node index, and then dev will node mon index. The difference is that this one monitors for changes and restarts the server, and then it automatically said, I'm going to use jest for the unit test. I didn't tell it anything. It just automatically did all this. And then it's asking me, hey, I need to make this directory routes and this directory controllers for to be able to put the routes and controls. I'm going to tell it, okay, go ahead and create them. So it opened up the console, and then it faced an error. So it realizes, hey, there's an error. Maybe this command can't really create a couple of directories at the same time. Let me just create the routes for now. And then MakeDire created the directories, and then it created the controllers. So it sees the output from the commands and it reacts to them. Honestly, I can't wait until I don't have to press the blue button anymore. And when using something like dev containers, it can only have access to the dev container. So no matter what it does inside a dev container, it doesn't have really access to the outside computer. And so I'm not worried about it going crazy and doing something to my computer because it would only have access to the dev container. Right now, it is on my computer, so I need the blue button, but when it's on a dev container, I really wanted to just do the things for me without asking me. So right now, it's asking me, can I do npm install? And it told me, hey, I add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And I'm going to tell it continue. So as you can see, it already executed the command, and it's right now installing all Node Package Manager dependencies. And then now it's asking me, hey, I want to run this server. Can I do that? I'm telling it, okay, run the server. So it started the server on port 3000, and then it's telling me that I can call it with this curl command. So I can go ahead and copy this command, start a new terminal, or maybe I should just bring in a new one. So let's go ahead and run the curl command. It called the API with the calculator add endpoint, gave it the number 5 and the number 3, and the result was 8. So it is working. So let's go ahead and code review. We have an index that's starting an express server, and then it sets the port via environment if the environment was provided, but otherwise the default is 3000. And then it creates the route API calculator and gives it the routes that are in the routes directory. And so it adds a post for add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and it gives them links to the function. And you can see that it's sending the whole function. It's not calling the function. So if I do this, it's a function call, and that's going to break it. But right now, it's giving it the function so that it can call the function. So when I called the calculator add, it went to this add here, and it got from the body number 1 and number 2, and it made sure that they are numbers before proceeding, and then it summed them and then returned the result. It says the operation is addition, and that's the number 1 and number 2, and that's the result. And that's exactly the response that I got. So very fast, it created all of this for me. So now, before I proceed to the next stage, I'm going to initialize a Git repository. And in this Git repository, I'm going to commit. But before I commit, I need to ignore the files that I don't need. And so I'm going to first click keep on all of these changes, and I'm going to ask it to create a git ignore for me. So it created the git ignore, and by default, it ignored the node modules folder, which was the source of all the noise. And then it ignored some other files that are common with this project type. So I'm going to go ahead and write my initial commit. I can do that manually, or I can click this little button here, which is going to take a look at my changes, and it's going to tell me what happened. So this is a feature, hence the prefix feature. Initialize calculator API with basic routes and dependencies, and then it's going to go into what it did. So I have some unsaved files. So Visual Studio Code is telling me, do you want to save them? And I'm going to say yes, save all, and commit. So now that I have this all saved and committed, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my project. I noticed that there is no tests at all. So if I go into my folder and write npm test, it's going to run Jest, but is it going to run any tests? No, it didn't find any tests. So I want to tell it, hey, why don't you create some unit tests for me? And again, I'm being vague. I'm writing the minimum amount of words that I need. Usually, I'll tell it, hey, write the unit tests in jests, and I want you to make sure that you have division by zero cases. I want you to have all the edge cases. I want you to have like large numbers and small numbers, negatives, and I'm going to specify all the cases that I wanted to create for me, and then after that, in the next step, I'll tell it, hey, what cases am I missing? And then have a conversation with it and decide whether I need to add more cases or not. And usually, when I'm having that conversation, I'll go to the chat here and have that conversation because I don't want it to touch the code before I make my decision. I forgot to press keep on the previous time, so I'm just going to keep it. And keep and undo are very good concepts for when you're not using source control. But right now, I'm using source control. My files before the change and after the change are going to be preserved by source control. So the keep and undo is nice, but not really needed. And honestly, I don't trust them yet. This is all experimental. And so I trust Git. Git has been there for I started using Git in 2009. So we've been good friends. So I trust it by now. So it's going and adding those tests. If I see the app.test, it has a test case here should respond with API information on root path. So if I go to slash without any other uh, path, like it's going to show me what's there. And that's verifying that it has a message, it has endpoints, and endpoints has the property add, subtract, and multiply. And it's doing everything I would do if I am validating any valid path on the API I want to test, and I want to add valid tests for it that I need. And it realizes, hey, when I initially created the package.json, I had jest in there, but I didn't have supertest. And supertest is a very famous library that helps you um, call the API and have assertions on it. So you would get the response and assert that it has a certain property and stuff like that. And so now it's saying, okay, I've created the test. Do you want me to run the test? I'm saying, yeah, go ahead and run them. So it's running the tests and making sure that they passed, and they did pass. So right now it's getting the feedback from the console to make sure that its job is done or not. And then it's going to give me a report on what happened. And basically it's telling me I created unit tests for all four calculator operations, added tests for normal operations and edge cases, error handling. All 13 test cases passed, and then route test, and then application tests. Now, during real development, I would actually scrutinize the test cases more than the code itself. So I would go and say, I'll go to the add function and I'll break it. And I want to see if it's the tests are actually gonna fail or not. And I'm gonna do that with all the functions before I check in my work. But for the sake of time, I'm not gonna do that with all the functions today. But I am gonna show you that this is truly green when the function is correct and truly red when the function is correct. When writing unit tests, you should always check for false greens and false reds because you don't want to have a unit test that's useless. So again, I'm going to click that nice button and I'm going to have it tell me. Um, so add 404 error handling. So it apparently did some changes to the index to see if there is a 404 or not, and then also added the unit tests. I would like to separate the two. So I stage this file only, and then I'm going to add that, and then I'm going to click it again, which is going to give me add comprehensive test. This is the wrong prefix. The right prefix is test. If you're using semantic versioning and commitlint and all that stuff. So I'm going to fix that, and then I'm going to commit. Oh, I actually forgot to show you something. Git reset head. So I just undid the commit, and now I'm actually going to click this button here, which is Copilot code review. So it's going to read the code that I'm trying to check in, and then it's going to tell me if I have any mistakes in it. It is taking some time to code review, possibly because of the package log.json. It usually has lots of changes and it's a big file, so I don't blame it. All right, so it came back and told me, hey, the use of expect.close to is incorrect. Consider using just to be close to matcher. For example, you could assert that the result would expect blah, blah, blah to be close to, or structure the test object containing to be close to. So basically, it tells me that this I shouldn't use this close to. Honestly, I haven't used this close to or to be close to before because we don't deal with a lot of fractions in the code that we write. But I'm gonna go ahead and trust it and apply it. And let's validate one more time before we check this in to make sure that this is working. Oh, I actually didn't save the file. So let me stop the test and run it again. So this is the change that it did. So that change failed because this was closed or something. Anyways, that's not the point today. It can make mistakes, and that's why you need to validate. And so for the sake of time, I'm just gonna check this in and move on. So next we have, I want to create a README for this project. So I'm just going to tell it, create a README. I didn't tell it any of the specific that I want, which sections, whether I wanted to uh, do something special, follow a specific structure. I'm just going to give it the simple prompt. All right, so it went ahead and created the README. And as someone who's been using Visual Studio for a while, I know that right click here, there is an open preview that lets you read it like a human being instead of reading it like a machine and reading the markdown. So it added a table of content for me. It has a usage and then has API endpoints, and it has like a table where it shows me the request and the response. And that's a really good README. And it even has like the file structure and what each file is doing. And then it guessed that I want an MIT license, which I probably would, but that's why you should be specific and should always code review it. And then next, I'll add a factorial endpoint because I can. But anyways, let's skip that for the sake of time. But then I'm gonna ask it, hey, this README really needs some curl commands. What if someone wanted to try the API and did not want to? Oh, it actually has curl commands. I didn't see that. I hope it doesn't yell at me. be the first person AI yelled at. So it's going ahead and modifying the file, and you can actually seeing modifying the file. Sometimes it takes a bit to think on a few lines, and then others it just skips ahead. So, anyways, you get the gist of it. It's gonna go ahead and add the curl commands and for all of the things in the documentation. So I'd like to I for like we basically ran out of time, so I'm just gonna skip ahead to the discussion in QA, and then after some questions and answers, if people are willing to stay, I can stay until 1 p.m. and we can take a quick look at the remainder of the presentation. So there is a Q&A section and there is a chat section. So feel free to utilize any of those. Does anyone have any questions? All right, looks like everything was so clear that no one has any questions. Uh, would you like to stay with me for a couple of more minutes and go over the remainder of the slides, or would you like to end the session right now? All right, so I'll go ahead and go through some of the more important slides, but let me actually just skip over a couple. Uh, so we went through this. We've shown the model picker, we've shown the agent mode, and we've shown we haven't shown the inline editing, but basically you can right click anywhere and get suggestions from ChatGPT, and I think you can get that with a Control I, and then it will tell you to write a prompt right there in the code, and then you can have it add things for you. And then code completion, we didn't write any code ourselves because it wrote everything. But if we were writing, you'd get code completions like this. And then we went through the commit message generator. And then the Copilot menu at the top has a lot of options. And also, if you right click inside of an editor, you have more options. And then that's a really important slide. So there are best practices for prompts. You need to be concise but specific. And you need to ask it for everything that you need to ask it, just because you can waste time if you uh, don't give it complete prompts. It's just gonna do something that you don't like, and then you're gonna keep going and going. But as long as you're using source control or utilizing that keep or undo button correctly, you're not gonna lose any progress. So that's a good thing. And then, so an example of a good prompt: write a Python function factorial and that calculates the number numbers factorial, and it should use recursion and handle the case of negative inputs by returning an error message. So that's very specific. I told it what I need to do. So it's going to give me exactly what I want. It might make mistakes, but it's going to be very close to what I need. A bad prompt is exactly what I did. Create a calculator. That is a bad prompt. I didn't tell it the language, I didn't tell it anything, and I just gave it all of the freedom. In a greenfield project or like in a new project that like that calculator, that's probably not a bad idea because it's gonna show you how it would do it if you didn't give it the instructions, and that might inspire you to do something new. But in a current project, it's going to go and it's going to wreak havoc on your code. And if you do not have your state saved in Git, you're going to suffer for trying to return to the working condition it was. And then if you're debugging, you want to state what the problem is. You want to state where you think the problem is, and you want to tell it the error that happened, and you want to ask it to identify it and fix it. But I'd probably split those up. At first, chat with it, make sure it can identify it for me, and then ask it for a fix for the problem if I'm convinced that's the real problem. When you're refactoring, you really want to include this sentence here without changing its functionality, because it will go and change the functionality for you if you don't. And if you don't have unit test, you won't know. So have unit test or have it create unit test before the refactoring, and then do the refactoring and make sure the tests are still passing. So when asking it to explain the code, see what level are you at with that language or that project, so you can tell it which level you want it to be at. So if you're someone who's really experienced in the project, tell it that you're really experienced, so that it would give you um, the the explanation in a very short and concise way, so you don't have to read a wall of text. But if you're a beginner, you probably want the wall of text so you can understand more. And then when writing unit tests, you can like decide the library you're writing, and then tell it how many cases you want. You want to specify edge cases if you know them. If you don't know them, then you can probably look on the internet or ask it to give you a suggestion on what edge cases, and then you can go ahead and send that prompt. There's a new feature, the PR review. You've seen the local review from the plugin, but actually on GitHub, you can add Copilot as a reviewer, and it would go and give you an explanation of the whole PR, what changed, and then it would tell you some feedback and actually add comments, conversations in the code on the pull request, and tell you, hey, this is my suggestion to fix it, and you can click a button and it would commit that suggestion for you. The sometimes it generates low confidence comments, and it would cascade them under a collapsible control, and you can expand them and read them and then decide if you want to go ahead and implement those or not. But it does know that they're low confidence, and so it hides them in the beginning. So be careful to check those, because sometimes they are accurate. And then some resources. So Perplexity AI, I probably used that a lot when preparing for all the presentations that I've created in the last 3 months. It uses AI to find the best answer and then gives you a really good answer and the sources of that answer, so that you know to read for yourself and validate in, just because sometimes it does make mistake. AI always makes mistakes. And then there's some famous YouTubers here are Fireship. You can go ahead and watch those. They're really fun. And then Visual Studio Code does have videos on a channel. That's really nice. And then inside of the VS Code chat, uh, where is that? Let me exit out of here. So if you go to the chat here, you can say add VS Code and talk to VS Code and tell it, hey, how do I do this or that? It's called participant. So there's a workspace participant, there's a VS Code participant. There are a couple of participants that you can talk to. Most of the time it works, but sometimes it doesn't. Every plugin you install can have a participant, and so Docker has a participant because I have the Docker plugin, and so on and so forth. And then finally, discussion and Q&A again. If you have any questions, please ask them. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending and for like being patient with me. And I hope that I gave you some useful information and excited you about AI. And I hope that in the future, AI will make your job a lot easier. And remember, AI cannot replace you, but it can make you faster. Thank you, everyone. You are very welcome, everyone.